90% of people buying Irish whiskey are spending their money at the wrong level. Not because cheap Irish whiskey is bad, some of it is genuinely world-class. But because most people have no idea there are 7 completely different tiers of this category, each one built on different production methods, different aging philosophies, and wildly different value propositions. Spend too little and you miss what Irish whiskey can actually do. Spend too much before your palate is ready and you are handing over serious money for complexity you cannot yet taste. By the end of this breakdown, you will know exactly where to put your money, which levels to skip entirely, and why the sweet spot might not be where you think it is. If you have any Irish favorites, drop them down in the comments, and let's get started. These are the 7 levels of Irish whiskey. Level 1, the pub pause, $15 to $25. This is where Irish whiskey lives in the popular imagination. Jameson, Tullamore Dew, Bushmills Original, Kilbeggan. These are the bottles behind every bar, at every birthday party, and behind every St. Patrick's Day promotion you have ever seen. And here is the thing most whiskey snobs will not admit. They are genuinely good. Not complex, not something you sit and contemplate, but good, honest, drinkable whiskey that delivers exactly what it promises. What separates Irish whiskey from Scotch at this price has everything to do with distillation. Most Irish whiskey runs through the still 3 times instead of the 2 passes Scottish distillers typically use. That extra distillation strips out harsh congeners and creates the smooth, approachable character that defines the category. Jameson is a blend of single pot, still, and grain whiskey matured in a combination of bourbon and sherry casks. Tullamore Dew is technically more complex, blending 3 separate whiskey styles: single malt, single pot still, and single grain, all in one bottle. For under $25, that is a genuinely impressive formula. The flavor profile across this level is consistent. Light honey, vanilla softness from bourbon barrel aging, a touch of orchard fruit. Almost no burn on the finish. These bottles are designed for mixing: Irish coffee, whiskey sours, a simple rocks pour on a Tuesday night. If you are sipping them neat and wondering what the fuss is about, you're not doing anything wrong. You are just using the wrong tool for the job. Level 1 exists to be mixed, shared, and enjoyed without overthinking it. Level 2, the upgraded standard, $30 to $40. This is the tier that most casual drinkers skip entirely, and that is a mistake because this is where the best value in Irish whiskey quietly lives. The jump from level 1 to level 2 is the most noticeable improvement in this entire category. Anyone with a working set of taste buds can feel the difference. Bushmills Black Bush is the clearest example of what is happening here. It costs around $32 and contains about 80% single malt aged in Oloroso sherry casks for up to 8 years. Compare that to the standard Bushmills White Label, which leans heavily on grain whiskey in bourbon barrels. That sherry influence transforms the whiskey completely. Dried fruit shows up, Christmas spice, hints of dark chocolate. The finish extends in ways that level 1 cannot match. Power's Gold Label belongs in this conversation too. It is built on 70% pot still whiskey, which is the style that makes Irish whiskey unique to the entire world. No other country produces whiskey this way. The combination of malted and unmalted barley through a copper pot still creates a spicy, creamy, full-bodied character that blended Scotch and bourbon cannot replicate. At $30, Power's Gold Label is possibly the most undervalued bottle in this entire video. If you want to understand what separates Irish whiskey from everything else on the shelf, this is where that story begins. Jameson Black Barrel rounds out this tier. It takes the standard Jameson blend and finishes it in double-charred bourbon barrels. The extra char caramelizes more wood sugar and adds a butterscotch richness and toasted oak warmth that the original simply does not have. Teeling small batch finishes in rum casks from Central America, and for $30 to $35, that tropical sweetness and warm spice makes it one of the more interesting bottles at any price point. For daily drinking, for cocktails, for impressing friends on a budget, level 2 often outperforms everything above it in terms of sheer value delivered per dollar spent. Level 3, Gateway to Premium, $45 to $60. This is where Irish whiskey stops being a casual drink and starts demanding your attention. And there's one style at this level that sets Irish whiskey apart from every other whiskey category on the planet. Single pot still whiskey, made from a mash of malted and unmalted barley, triple distilled in copper pot stills at a single distillery. It is a style indigenous to Ireland, born out of a 19th century tax on malted barley that forced distillers to throw unmalted barley into the mash as a workaround. What began as a cost-saving measure accidentally created the most distinctive whiskey style in the world. Green Spot is the bottle that converts people. It sits at roughly $50 to $55, and it is a textbook single pot still expression from the Middleton Distillery in Cork. The backstory is worth knowing. Mitchell and Son was a Dublin wine merchant in the 1800s who stored and aged whiskey in their cellars, marking barrels at different maturity stages with paint. Green marked the barrels they considered at their peak, somewhere between 7 and 10 years. Today, it is still made to that original brief. On the nose, you get orchard fruit, fresh apple, pear, and a honeyed warmth. On the palate, there is a creamy texture that coats your mouth in a way that grain-heavy blends never achieve. The finish lingers long past the point where cheaper whiskies have already disappeared. Writer's Tears is the other standout here. It blends single pot still and single malt with no grain whiskey at all, aged in bourbon barrels and priced around $50. It is lighter and more delicate than Green Spot, smoother, more approachable for someone making the transition from blended whiskey into premium territory. These are no longer cocktail bottles. Pour them neat, add a drop of water, and give them the time they deserve. Level 4, the Enthusiast Choice, $60 to $80. This is where Irish whiskey earns its international reputation, and there is one bottle at this level that gets recommended in almost every serious whiskey conversation for very good reason. Redbreast 12-year-old is the reference standard for single pot still whiskey. Made at Middleton, aged in a combination of bourbon barrels and Oloroso sherry casks, with the youngest whiskey in the blend sitting at 12 years. The colour alone tells you something is different. Deep amber, copper highlights, darker than anything in the previous tiers. On the nose there is remarkable complexity. Dried fruit, marzipan, toasted hazelnuts, citrus peel, and those characteristic pot still spices, white pepper, cinnamon, a whisper of nutmeg. The texture is where Redbreast separates itself from almost everything else in Irish whiskey. It is almost oily. It coats your mouth and lingers, evolving from sweet to spicy to a deep warmth that settles in long after the glass is empty. Yellow Spot, the older sibling of Green Spot, belongs at this level too. Aged 12 years across bourbon, sherry and Malaga wine casks, that triple maturation adds layers that the Green Spot cannot match. Stone fruit, honey, red wine richness, a finish that seems to keep developing for minutes after each sip. If you have someone in your life who swears they do not like Irish whiskey because it is too light, too simple or not complex enough, hand them a glass of either of these. That conversation ends by the second sip. Level 5. Aged Excellence, $90 to $130. We are now in special occasion territory. These are not daily drinkers. These are bottles you open for a reason. Redbreast 15-year-old takes everything that made the 12 so compelling and deepens it. 3 more years might sound incremental, but the proportion of first fill sherry casks increases, which fundamentally shifts the flavour. The fruit that was fresh in the 12-year becomes dried here. Raisins, figs, dark plum. The pot still spice that was prominent becomes more integrated, woven into the whiskey rather than sitting on top of it. The oak is present without being dominant. It is a more refined, more considered expression. The honest question you have to ask yourself at this level is whether the jump is worth the price difference. Going from level 3 to level 4 is something almost everyone notices immediately. Going from level 4 to level 5 requires a trained palate to fully appreciate. The differences are real, they are just more subtle. For most people, Redbreast 12 is genuinely the ceiling in terms of value. Everything above it is about depth, refinement, and the experience of drinking something that took real time to become what it is. Whether that is worth an extra $50 to $70 over the 12-year-old depends entirely on how seriously you take your whiskey. Level 6, Ultra Premium, $200 to $300. We have now crossed the line between drinking whiskey and experiencing whiskey. These are bottles that demand contemplation. Redbreast 21-year-old is produced in very limited quantities and represents 2 decades of careful aging across bourbon and sherry casks. The color is deep mahogany. The nose fills the room before the glass even reaches your lips. Dried fruit, polished leather, dark chocolate, a hint of something almost exotic and spice that comes with genuine age. On the palate, every element supports every other element. There is no rough edge, no single note that sticks out awkwardly, just total integration and a finish that keeps evolving for several minutes. This is the kind of whiskey that makes you sit in silence for a moment after the first sip. Middleton, very rare, represents the other pinnacle at this level. Released once a year since 1984, each annual vintage is a unique hand-selected blend of single-pot, still and single-grain whiskies, aged anywhere from 12 to over 30 years. No 2 vintages taste identical. Current releases sit around $220, with older editions fetching considerably more. What you're getting at this tier is not just older whiskey, it is whiskey that rewards genuine attention, that reveals new notes on the 3rd and 4th pour that you completely missed on the first. Is it worth it for drinking purely on a value per dollar basis? That is the wrong question at this level. You are not here for value. You are here for the experience. Level 7, the Collector's Realm, $500 and beyond. We have officially left the territory of drinking and entered the world of collecting, investing, and genuinely absurd liquid. Redbreast 27-year-old sits at the entry point of this tier, bottled at cask strength of just over 54% and aged for nearly 3 decades across bourbon, sherry, and ruby port casks. At approximately $500, every sip reveals something new, but at this price it is merely the beginning of the conversation. From here, things escalate quickly. The Middleton Very Rare Silent Distillery Collection is where the numbers start to become genuinely difficult to process. Distilled at the original Middleton Distillery before it closed in 1975, these whiskies are liquid history. The recent Chapter 6 release, a 50-year-old single pot still, carried a price tag of $60,000 per bottle. Let that sit for a moment. And then there is the Emerald Isle Collection, which in 2024 set the world record for the most expensive whiskey ever sold when an American collector paid $2.8 million for the set. The bottle itself is a 30-year-old single malt. The package comes with a bespoke Fabergé egg, an uncut emerald, and a custom 22-carat gold timepiece. At that level, you are not purchasing a drink. You are purchasing a piece of history, an object of extreme rarity and the bragging rights that come with owning something almost no one on earth has ever tasted. So where does that leave the average Irish whiskey drinker? The honest sweet spot lives between levels 2 and 4, from $30 up to around $80. This is where quality and value genuinely align. Start at level 2 to understand what the category can do at an honest price. Move into level 3 when you are ready to experience single pot still for the first time. Climb to level 4 when you want the reference standard that the whole category points toward. Dip into level 5 occasionally when the moment deserves it. And unless you are building a serious collection or simply have money that genuinely does not matter, leave levels 6 and 7 to the people they were made for. That money could buy you 10 exceptional bottles instead of 1 legendary one. 10 bottles means 10 evenings, 10 conversations, 10 discoveries. That math always wins. The best Irish whiskey is the bottle you actually open. Everything else is just expensive furniture. So, did you agree? As always, let me know in the comments. Until then, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed that, and thank you for listening. See you in the next one.